Kick off your shoes and pick up a controller? Today, I want to help you beat the Vault in Halls of Torment. The Vault is the 6th and semi-secret hall in the game. You unlock it by purchasing enough items from the Wellkeeper and then following the trail of gold to its entrance. The Vault is very difficult. Prior to the January 31st, 2025 patch, the Shield Maiden used to make clearing the Vault a trivial matter. But since that patch adjusted defense and block strength, it's no longer as simple. Luckily for us, with a bit of knowledge and preparation, there are a few other ways that we can clear the Vault. In this guide, I'm going to explain the Vault mechanics, the general strategy, and go through a few builds to help you tackle this challenge. Keep in mind the information in this guide is aimed at players who have never beaten the Vault before. As such, any items, tricks, or build recommendations you see come from farming items in the base version of the halls, not in agony mode. The reason being is because I wanted to make this guide using the common version of equipment, since in order to get the uncommon versions, you would have needed to beat the Vault in the first place. With that out of the way, let's take a look at some of the special mechanics of the Vault. Again, in order to access the Vault, you need to purchase items from the Wellkeeper. Once you buy enough, you will disappear from camp and leave a trail of gold. Follow the gold outside of the camp and into the entrance of the well. There, you'll need to pay a small offering of gold in order to enter. Paying that fee also adds a modifier to the Vault run. There are negative modifiers like extra enemy spawns or increased enemy health, but also some positive ones like bonus XP gain or an additional ability tome spawning. There are a wide range of modifiers, so this can make or break your run before you even set foot inside the Vault. If you pay tribute and get some unfavorable modifiers, you can enter and exit the Vault to reset them and try again. You'll lose the donated gold, but gaining more for tribute should not be an issue. Once you get some manageable modifiers, go ahead and enter the Vault and get your run started. The first thing to note about the Vault is that the timer goes up instead of counting down. This is important because enemies start off very strong in the Vault and will quickly scale up the longer the run goes. This means that you want to hit power spikes early so that you can clear it before it becomes too difficult. With that in mind, let's go over the general strategy for how we're going to clear the Vault. Here is a rough map of the Vault. It kind of looks like a giant wheel. In the center is the Lord of Greed, but he starts out protected by an energy barrier. In order to free him so we can defeat him, we need to break that barrier. You'll notice 4 tethers leading outwards from the boss. If you follow these tethers down the respective halls, you'll find an orb on a pedestal. We need to break those orbs in order to free the boss. There are also some small pathways in between the main halls, which you can use to loop enemies and escape sticky situations. Now, I know we said we need to rush and clear the Vault as fast as possible before enemies overwhelm us. But don't start out by rushing down the 4 pillars immediately. They have a ton of health, and at the start of the run, you're just too weak to effectively burn them down. We need to get a few levels and abilities first before we take out the orbs. I like to start the run by getting the ability tome next to me and then moving immediately to the next tome. Then making my way to 2 scrolls while quickly thinning out the enemies. This way I can gain a few levels and get 4 abilities up and running. We'll go over which abilities you should aim for in the build section of the video. I just wanted to quickly highlight the strategy that's worked for me post-patch. Once you have the abilities, now it's time to start taking out the pillars. Make your way to the closest one and start wheeling it down. You'll want to move in a loose circular pattern so the enemies don't surround you. Make sure to position yourself so you're not only hitting the orb, but you're also taking out the mob spawn as well. If you ever notice that you're about to be surrounded, it's okay. Just leave the pillar and either use one of the side passages to loop, or move on to an adjacent orb. You'll come back to it later. Just keep making your way around the outer spoke of the wheel, destroying the orbs where you can. Once the final orb falls, it's time to move on to the boss fight against the Lord of Greed. With the barrier broken, the Lord of Greed will activate as you approach the middle of the chamber. This boss fight is extremely difficult, not because of the boss patterns or the damage, but because enemies will continue to spawn and scale. So if you're not diligent about managing the adds, you will find yourself once again overwhelmed. The Lord of Greed has 2 phases. In phase 1, he'll be riding atop a mechanical looking throne with 6 legs. He has a lot of AoE attacks which last for a long time. Luckily, they're easy to spot and dodge, and shouldn't provide too much difficulty once you get used to them. Again, the biggest issue is making sure you don't dodge into adds. If you're playing a melee character, it may be a bit tougher, but you should still be able to avoid most of his abilities. The boss has 9 different attack patterns in this phase. The first is a tightly packed AoE, which will cause multiple vortex explosions from the ground beneath you. This is easy to dodge by continuing to move in whatever direction you're currently going. Do not stand still or move back in the previous direction or you will get hit. The second attack is a linear long range attack. The boss will summon 4 lines of rising flame in quick succession. You can dodge this again by continuing to move in the same direction. You can also dodge this by standing between the columns of flame and moving within the empty space. His third attack is a massive AoE that causes random pillars of fire to erupt from the ground. You'll need to pay attention to the warning circles here and make sure to stay in the safe spots. The fourth attack is a radial spread of energy orbs that continue to path outward for some time. This is really easy to dodge since the orbs are so slow moving, and you can actually walk in between them. The fifth attack is another radial pattern attack. The boss will summon large rings of erupting vortexes in a circular pattern around him. This is once again easy to dodge by standing in the safe spots between the rings, or by continuing to move out to a safe range. The sixth attack is probably the most chaotic one. He shoots out waves of ethereal flames from 3 points that seemingly shoot out in random pattern. But what's happening is that each point slowly rotates while he's firing it off. What this means is that you can dodge it by moving in the same direction as the flames. This is easy to do if you're further away from the boss. His seventh attack is another energy ball attack. He'll shoot out a small cluster of 4 orbs that rotate heavily at first, but slow down as they move away from the boss. This is easy to dodge, but it lasts for a while and kinda gets in the way of dodging his other moves. The eighth attack is yet another energy orb attack. This time he's fused a stream of them in a line that tracks the player's movements. Just keep moving to avoid this one. The ninth and final attack is similar to the Frost Avalanche ability. The boss will emit waves of slow-moving flame across the ground that stay active for a very long time. They are super easy to dodge by staying between the emitters, but be careful because the waves do turn. Okay, that was a lot of information. In all honesty, it all boils down to staying out of the highlighted danger zones, and placing yourself in between his attacking lanes. Once more, this is made challenging because of the constant pressure from the adds. Once you get him down to half health, he'll lose the mechanical legs. Now, we move on to phase 2 of the fight. The Lord of Greed retains his previous attacks, but also gains 2 new attacks. With the first, he will summon large piles of gold near your character that hover for a moment before collapsing on the boss. It can be tough to see them in the chaos of the level, but try your best to take note of their position relative to the boss. That way you can avoid a majority of them. The second and final attack has him summon massive waves of golden skeletons that rise up from the ground. The skellies will run toward the boss and pile on him. Afterwards, they will lift him up off the ground, and he will resume the attacks from phase 1. Once you damage him enough, the skeletons will crumble and he will be reduced to just the throne like at the start of phase 2. When he is in the grounded state, he pretty much only uses the 2 phase 2 attacks. While lifted, he does the full phase 1 assault. So you can see it's important to keep the pressure on so that he spends more time in the grounded state. Again, I cannot stress enough how much this boss fight is really about ad management and situational awareness. You need to make sure that you've always got the safe path in mind and you can avoid both the extra spawns and the boss attack patterns. If you keep at the pace, don't lose focus, and continue to whittle down the boss, the Lord of Greed will eventually fall. Once again, that was a lot of information about the vault and its mechanics. So let's quickly summarize everything we've discussed so far. For vault mechanics, in order to enter the vault, you need to pay tribute. This tribute will confer a modifier to the run. You can reset modifiers by entering and exiting the vault. Enemies scale the longer the run goes, so we need to finish fast. For the general strategy, you want to grab the 4 ability grinding items first and foremost. Then make our way to the orbs and break them down. As for the boss fight, there are 2 phases to deal with, and he switches phases when he gets to half health. He has a lot of attacks, but they're mostly easy to avoid. Just focus on constant movement and dodging and managing the adds. And now that we've gone through the vault and its multitude of mechanics, I want to highlight a couple of builds that will help you get through this challenge. When working through these builds, I make sure to only select the base versions of equipment that you can get from farming the normal versions of the halls. However, a few builds make use of marks which you must get from reaching torment thresholds in agony mode. I've said this in other videos, but one of the best ways to make progression in this game is to go back to one of the most OP characters, the Archer. They have carried me through some of the most difficult levels in the game, and the vault is no different. To complement the Archer's high crit, heavy physical damage playstyle, the first build I want to highlight is the physical build. Now, I use the Archer for this build, but this will work for pretty much any character that deals primarily physical damage. That means the Swordsman, the Beast Huntress, and probably even the Lensknecht, although her playstyle is pretty tough without good items. Speaking of items, when making this physical build, a lot of the items are interchangeable depending on which character you're using. However, one item that is not negotiable is the ring Echoing Ban. I've said this in a few other videos, but for physical damage builds, Echoing Ban is just phenomenal. It does so much extra damage over the course of the run, it's practically another ability. For the other items, I went with equipment that boosted my crit chance, attack speed, and overall damage. I used the Wind Crown Helmet, the Echoing Band and Copper Rings, the Duelist Spark Necklace, the running shoe boots, the blood-soaked shirt, and the quick hand gloves. I also went with Mark of the Landsknecht, but that isn't necessary at all. If you're following along with this guide and using the archer, these items will get you through it. If you don't have all these items, it's okay. Just take whichever ones you have. The most important ones are the echoing band and the copper ring. For all the other equipment slots, just take whatever boosts your damage and crit the most. When you're selecting your abilities for the run, you want to use your 2 tomes for Phantom Needles and Ring Blades. These are 2 very strong physical damage abilities that will help you thin out the hordes of enemies you're going to face. Plus they have great upgrades and synchronize well with the archer. For the scrolls, you want to get the other physical abilities, so re-roll and try to get Morning Star and Astronomer's Orb. If you don't get them, that's alright, just take the best abilities available from the pool. As you're progressing the run, you want to focus your traits on crit chance and crit damage whenever they show up. Then build up your force, multi-strike, and attack speed. You may need to take more movement speed and health upgrades than you usually take, just to make sure you can avoid and tank a few hits. With this build, I was able to clear it with the archer, though it did take me 2 tries. It's still difficult and I had a tough time keeping up with adds in certain moments. Since this guide is supposed to be about clearing the vault easily, this led me to try to find a simpler and more consistent strategy to beat this level. And lo and behold, I think there is a better way. Even though our beloved Shield Maiden has been nerfed, that doesn't mean she's entirely useless. The Shield Maiden mark adds your block strength modifier to damage, as well as adding additional block strength traits to the pool. It may not sound like much, but the extra damage can be helpful in very specific situations. Unlock the Shield Maiden mark by reaching Agony 3 in the Forgotten Viaducts with the Shield Maiden. Everyone can make use of damage in Halls of Torment. The more damage you have, the faster you take out enemies, we understand. However, there are 2 characters that scale extremely well with upgrades to damage, the Exterminator and the Cleric. They benefit in 2 different ways, so let's focus on one at a time, starting with the Exterminator. The Exterminator has a very low base damage value, but an insane attack speed of 3 attacks per second. This is balanced out by adding a slight damage penalty to each of his attacks. If you check out the Exterminator stat sheet, you'll find a damage mod per hit value. This is the percent reduction applied to each of his hits. One of the best ways to improve the Exterminator is to improve his base damage value, which takes advantage of that high attack speed. This is further compounded when you factor in the multiplier values from the Shield Maiden mark. Then if you start stacking force, which reduces that damage penalty, everything starts coming together. Your Flamecaster will start dealing some impressive damage as it quite literally melts through the enemies. Now that we see the role that damage plays with the Exterminator, let's go over the build. For the equipment, we're going to go with the basic fire build items with some slight changes to the rings. For the rings, we want the Ring of Fire and the Iron Ring. The Iron Ring increases base damage by 15. It may not seem like much, but it represents a 30% increase in his base damage. And as we now know, increasing his base damage goes very far thanks to that crazy attack speed. The rest of the items are standard for fire damage builds. Ruby Circular Helmet, Elemental Resonator Necklace, Firewalker Boots, Blazing Shell Chest, and Sparking Tips Gloves. Finally, cap it off with the Shield Maiden mark. The main point of this build is to deal massive amounts of burn damage, which will be supplemented by the Flamecaster. We're going to spread burn using the Flamecaster and abilities to as many enemies as possible, and trigger Sparking Tips with physical damage whenever we can. Now that we got the plan set up, let's talk about the abilities. With the first 2 tomes, you want to select Ring Blades and Dragon's Breath. I know, you're probably thinking, why the heck do we need Ring Blades? The reason why is because Sparking Tips deals bonus damage if you hit a burning enemy with physical attacks. So we take one of the best physical damage abilities in order to proc it. With the other 2 scrolls, try to fish for Flame Strike and any other physical ability. For your level up traits, you want to focus on Force, Damage, Burn Chance, and Block Strength percentage. Again, we aren't really using block strength upgrades for defense and survivability, we're using it to boost our final damage. By the end of my successful run, it ended up increasing my damage by 130%, which is nothing to scoff at. And just like with the archer, take any health and movement speed upgrades you feel you need. It's important to be able to outrun the baddies and dodge the boss, so don't neglect those upgrades. I was able to beat the Lord of Greed in under 15 minutes using this strategy and with basic items, so it should work out well for you too. That's all for the Exterminator. Let's move on to the Cleric. The Cleric's primary attack deals massive amounts of damage spread out amongst all targets in the area. In order to support that style of play, it has an insanely high base damage of 1000. This means even adding a single 10% increase boosts his damage by a whopping 100. This build tries to capitalize on that by using items and trait upgrades to maximize that damage increase. For equipment, we use a mix of damage improvement and utility. For the necklace, we'll take Warrior's Fervor. This gives us a sizable buff whenever we pick up a potion or a heal. For the rings, we'll take the Copper Ring and Holy Relic. Holy Relic will drop either a healing light or a buff every 30 seconds. It drops a heal if we're missing health, which is very likely. If we collect the healing light, it will trigger the Warrior's Fervor amulet. We take the Copper Ring mostly due to it being a solid damage increase option, but if you have other rings you like, feel free to use them there. For the chest, we use the Blood-Soaked Shirt. It increases our damage and gets stronger when you defeat enemies. It has diminishing returns by the end of the run. It had gotten up to 24%. It also includes a small chance to heal, but that's mostly negligible. For the hands, I used the Blood-Stained Wrappings. I wanted the extra healing as a safety net, but probably could have switched this with something more damage oriented. For the headpiece, we use the hood. For the boots, take the running shoes. The extra movement speed helps make up for the Cleric's slow walk, and allows us to stay ahead of the enemies. The main synergy in this build comes from the Holy Relic and Warrior's Fervor. Every 30 seconds, a healing beam should drop and trigger the 15-second buff from the necklace. Dealing double damage at double attack speed allows the Cleric to clear out massive waves of enemies, and each kill charges up the Bloodstained Shirt, further boosting your damage. With your first two tomes, you want to select Radiant Aura and Transfixion abilities. They're strong magic abilities and sync incredibly well with the Cleric's focus on magic damage. With your scrolls, you want to pick any other magic damage ability if possible. If you don't get any, you should be able to make do with just Radiant Aura and Transfixion, so pick your favorites from whatever else is offered. The strategy with this build is to use the Cleric's high damaging wide AoE attack to focus areas of the massive enemy hordes. Your main attack and Transfixion will put the fragile debuff on enemies, increasing the damage they take. Radiant Aura will also pulse periodically, dealing large damage to enemies that get close. Hopefully this will finish off whatever you weren't able to take out, or at least thin out your next area of focus. When selecting level up traits, make sure to focus on damage increases, debuff chance, block strength % increases, and area. You want to have your primary attack and abilities hitting as hard and wide as possible. Feel free to also take some health and utility upgrades as needed. Make sure you pay attention to move speed so you continue to stay ahead of the enemies. With this build, I was able to beat the Lord of Greed in under 12 minutes and edit that achievement in the process. And there you have it, a comprehensive method to beat the vault post the defense adjustment patch. Hopefully this insight into the mechanics of the vault and a few build suggestions helps you conquer this challenging level. Just remember to stay focused, always know your escape path is, be ready to dodge the boss's onslaught of attacks, and victory will surely be yours. This was a longer video and I appreciate you sticking around till the end. If you did find this video helpful, please like and subscribe to the channel. Were you able to defeat the Lord of Greed? Which character and build did you use? Were you able to get one of the speedrun achievements in the process? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you need help or clarification, feel free to reach out there as well. Thank you for watching and good luck on all your future runs.